Hey everybody, Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com, back to do another video and initial analysis from the Steelers' much-needed 41-17 victory over the Atlanta Falcons Sunday afternoon at Heinz Field. Steelers again get the much-needed W there. I wouldn't have called this one a must-win, but given the very critical slate of games coming up, these next now 3 games, 4 weeks with the bye week sandwiched in between. You have AFC North opponents with Cincy, Cleveland, and Baltimore. This is a really defining stretch for the Steelers, and obviously getting the big win over Atlanta today was about as good of a start as you could ask for, especially considering where this team's been at and where you thought this team could end up prior to today. It was really a complete game. So often these Steeler games, one side of the ball, whether that's offense or defense, typically the offense, but not always, seems to shoulder the load. The other part of the ball lags behind. And while there were problems with each today, you can nitpick stuff more defensively than offensively, perhaps. I thought it was a really complete game. And then you factor in special teams, which, aside from a Chris Boswell missed extra point, was stellar, and that's how you beat any team by as much as the Steelers did. 20 plus points as they did against Atlanta today. So offensively, Ben, still some, boneheaded mistakes. The interception, where he just threw a literal jump ball to AB. It was maybe his worst decision of the past 2 seasons. But, beyond that, he played well. Had some struggles with getting in sync and hitting AB early in the game and in the first half, as has been the case throughout the year. But they finally hit the deep ball there in the second half to kind of really cap this one. It was a great route, a great release by Antonio Brown, and Ben put it perfectly before the safety could get over and close on it. So overall, a good, not great performance from Ben Roethlisberger, but they moved the chains. He made some key throws. He got the vertical ball working a little bit better than it has in the past. The touchdown to Juju was a nice throw, and I think he looked off the safety on that one too. So some hidden credit there for Ben Roethlisberger. But there's a game where he didn't need to throw the football, thankfully, 50, 60 times as he has for the past several weeks, and coming into this game, he was on pace to set the NFL record for attempts in the season. Only threw 29 times today. I think he had 31 dropbacks. So see that number basically chopped in half from where it's been at is a really good sign. And Randy Fichtner said they wanted to establish the run game, and they absolutely did. This was a team. If you're going to run against any team, it was going to be Atlanta, who was already averaging 5 yards per carry, one of the worst figures in the league. Now without Grady Jarrett, arguably would be their best defensive player with all the injuries they've suffered. So they gashed him. They worked the interior. James Conner got what's blocked, but then he also was able to create on his own, break tackles, run hard, getting at the second and third level, and really challenge those safeties and cornerbacks to try to bring him down. And generally speaking, the Falcons just could not. So, it was really good to see Conner. He's played the same basically every game with some slight variation and slight variance, but the blocking really has been the bigger issue of why the run game hasn't succeeded, as is game situation where they fall behind, as they did against, teams like Baltimore and Kansas City. And they're playing catch up when they have to get away from the run game, and it just isn't there. And so the run game just, the numbers don't look good. But Connor's been able to create, even in like the Baltimore game where the running numbers were pitiful. He was creating. He was really getting some harder yards, and so it was really glad to see him put up the numbers that he should be putting up and play to the way his stats reflect. I think the level of play he's been at. So that was really good to see from James Conner, and hats off to him. Hats off to the offensive line, who did a stellar job in both phases. You're seeing why the Steelers' offensive line is capable of being a top 3 unit when healthy in the NFL. I said before this game that Ramon Foster looks back to his old self. He was solid. David Castro was really strong. Just overall, holding the pass rushers in check, especially Takk McKinley, who's been their best pass rusher so far this year. One of the few guys that's managed to stay healthy for Atlanta. So a lot of credit to them for a really good day. And then back to James Conner real quick. Again, being an asset as a blocker, as a receiver, gets 75 yards receiving today, which was awesome. Being able to create that third down screen that he had in the second half was a huge play for him. There's a train coming, which unfortunately, again, I start these videos. As soon as I start them, a train pops up. So I'm going to mute my mic here, I think, in a second, so you don't hear the horn as much. So I'll take one brief pause. Okay, well, that always happens in these videos, but maybe I can edit that out a little bit. But yeah, I thought Connor played really well as a receiver, just kind of being that well-rounded guy, and largely speaking, an every down guy, definitely in all situations, all scheme kind of guy. He got some, rest with how much work he got for Stephen Ridley and Jalen Samuels got a snap. But overall, just good to get that run game going. It certainly played to its potential in the way that it's needed to throughout, and so that was really good to see. At receiver, again, good to see Antonio Brown. So many misses early, it was so frustrating, but they finally connect later in the game. Ben kind of got into a rhythm, got more in sync with his timing and ball placement, and AB did the rest, and looks like his AB self. So the problem with the whole Ben AB connection was very rarely Antonio Brown being the problem, as much as it was Ben Roethlisberger or some other factor. Defense is taking him away, pressure that missed some opportunities, just play call that went to somebody else other than Antonio Brown. So it was very rarely the problem laying at the feet of Antonio Brown. Other receivers, Juju, relatively quiet, but had that one nice catch down the seam. Whenever he's able to catch the ball away from his body, he can make those tough combative catches because he is such a big guy, a physical player. So as long as he does not let that ball get into his frame, the dude's going to be more than solid. Everyone else pretty quiet today, but that's okay. You get the game, you get the offense running through the run game, literally. James Conner being an asset as a receiver. Very quiet stuff from Jesse James, Vance McDonald, Ryan Switzer didn't have as much action in the offensive game plan as he has in the past, but that's okay. You move the ball however you can do it, and that's why when I talk about balance, I don't care about your exact numbers, although as it turned out today, the Steelers ran the ball as much as they threw the football, but just did you pass it when you had to, and did you run it when you had to? And the ability to do both keeps defenses on their toes and ultimately makes you a successful team. Defensively, got to give a ton of credit to this defense. It starts with Keith Butler, facing a really talented and explosive Atlanta Falcons offense. I know the team as a whole has struggled, but offensively they've been really good. They've been, I think, a top 5 team in points per game. You hold them to 17 in this one. I think it started with shadowing Julio Jones, which is something this team does not do very often. I think they did it to Hopkins last year against Houston, and that might have been the only time last year they shadowed a receiver at all. But they shadowed Julio Jones with Joe Hayden, who even played him in the slot, and Julio didn't catch a pass through the first 3 quarters. So you take away their best weapon, you partially make him one-dimensional because of the game circumstance, and you force the other guys to beat you. Now there were a couple of hiccups, as there will always be with the way the rules are, and this defense certainly not one of the top 10 in the NFL. The Mohamed Sanu touchdown was off an RPO. Sean Davis took a bad angle. Boston was biting up on the run fake or the run action on the RPO, and Sanu was untouched. But generally speaking, situational football, some big red zone stops, that was huge. Third down defense was okay, statistically not great, but I think a little bit better than what the stats show. That's the other point I wanted to make for the offense. They struggled so much on third down this year. They came into this game 28th in the NFL in third down conversion. They finished today 9-12. They were 2-12 last week versus Baltimore, so that made a huge difference keeping drives alive. And on the other side, the defense able to stall out some of the Atlanta drives where they got the one where I think they had back-to-back sacks or 2 sacks and as the Atlanta approached the red zone, and I think forced them to settle for a field goal. So just situational football, which is what this defense calling card is going to have to be, creating splash plays. That situational football, not hurting themselves as much as possible because the talent's not going to be elite. But again, today you get the fumble for 6, which I know came late in the game, but still it's a splash play. You get 6 sacks in Matt Ryan, which is great to see. And then the game situation where just Atlanta became one-dimensional. Their run game wasn't particularly strong to begin with. They get down, you have to throw it. These pass rushers can pin their ears back and go to work. So really impressive performances from T.J. Watt. Cam Hayward had a pancake sack, basically where he walked back to center Alex Mack and into the lap of Matt Ryan. And overall it was a strong performance. They were able to get home with 4. They blitzed when they wanted to. Having Mike Hilton back as a blitzer is huge. His timing, Keith Butler has talked about it before. What makes Hilton so effective as a nickel corner blitzer is his timing and his feel for the cadence when the ball is going to be snapped. His ability to hide those blitzes and then come rush in at the last second and disguise it well. Something that Cam Sutton, his replacement, has not been able to do, and that's just kind of one of those innate things that either you have or you don't. And I think that Mike Hilton has it, and he got home with several pressures today. So kudos to him. Kudos to this whole secondary. Sean Davis played well. Artie Burns, Cody Sensabaugh didn't give up any big plays, even if they weren't spectacular. Burns had that near pick. Terrell Edmunds, ton of credit for Terrell Edmunds for playing a solid game. It was not flashy and spectacular, but good open field tackler, closing the football, was good with his keys, and coming off his worst game against Baltimore on a national stage, that's probably a tough pill to swallow. He bounces back where he played probably the best game of his young career, so a lot of credit to him. Special teams, a couple notes there. Chris Boswell missed the extra point, but in a way, I'm glad that he missed the first extra point. I allowed him to bounce back, and it wasn't like he missed the last extra point of the game, where now he's got to live with that for the rest of the week. He was able to hit the next four, and I think that's maybe a good confidence booster for him after obviously missing that first one, and definitely not the start that he wanted. Jordan Berry, his best game. I think he had a 51-yarder, a 55-yarder, and then a 37-yard punt that got pinned at the 1. So really good ability to show that the distance when appropriate and the placement when appropriate. And credit to guys like Cam Sutton and Brian Allen for covering those punts without Darius Hayward-Bay available. The coverage team in general has been excellent this year, especially kick coverage. I think I looked at the numbers, and the kick coverage is among like top 2, I think, in the NFL. I think they're in second place in kick return average allowed, and that was heading into today, so I don't know where the numbers stand after that. But that was I think it's been continually impressive all season. Has been the coverage units, and showed that again today. And then of course you get the pump block, which I think either it'll be up or it'll be up in an hour. An article breaking down this play, so I'll kind of leave it at that. I'm still actually going through how the pump block was created myself as I'm recording this here Sunday evening. But it wasn't really a crazy scheme. It was just kind of a straight rush. But you get Rosie Nix, who's a powerful guy, knows how to use his hands well, and just kind of is one of those guys that's a baller and finds the football. So no surprise that Rosie Nix gets his hand on it. But that was another huge game-changing play that was created by special teams and helps you win the turnover battle. So really solid day all around. The penalties, some dumb stuff, but some of those roughing the passer calls, we know where that's at, and it's hard to be too mad about that when TJ Watt gets a call for not even touching Matt Ryan and things of that nature. But overall, a much needed performance for all 3 phases. Not a ton to be mad about in this one, and like I said, a big stretch coming out where you got 3 AFC North teams. If you can go 2-1 in these next 3 games against AFC North opponents, you're in a really good spot. If not, then if you're going 1 or 2, then you're kind of back in the same place where you're going to need some help the rest of the way. You're not going to have an AFC North team until week 17. Excuse me. I think that's Cincinnati, I believe, in the finale. So that's what it's going to come down to. Yeah, I'm almost positive it's going to be Cincinnati in the finale, week 17. But just feel good about this one. It's nice to feel good about a game, which really hasn't happened all year. Tampa Bay, you kind of felt good, but then the Bucks came back in that one and could have pulled that one out. So you didn't really, you had a kind of a sour taste in your mouth exiting that one. But today, an excellent win. Credit to all 3 phases. Credit to the coaching staff. Credit to the players. And let me know your thoughts on this one, how you're feeling, if that's changed, from now going forward. Again, just a lot of good performances. LJ Ford, Tyler Matakevich, I don't want to forget those guys. I think both of them played a pretty solid game. Ford created some splash, as well. So anyway, let me know what you guys' thoughts are, whether you're watching on YouTube, Steelers Depot, or following me on Twitter at @Alex_Kozora. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.